Earth is electric, and gravity is a hoax. How incoherent electrostatics acceleration creates d, downward vectors. Gravitation, a word not many people comprehend, is a theory that was created to explain the paths of the luminaries above and what keeps them in orbit around other bodies, including our plane. It has been known and taught in colleges as well as physics courses that the electric forces that hold our Earth together are 26 times stronger than the gravitational forces that are supposedly here on Earth. So what holds our world together? Well, on the nuclear scale and at the 12 centimeters, and at the atomic scale, thousands of kilometers high, is really electric forces that hold this world together, but on a much larger scale. Planets, stars, and galaxies, it's gravity that holds our world together because they're lights in the sky. You might say that's very inconsistent of what I've just wrote here, because didn't I say that D cancels out? If you compare gravity to electricity, but keep in mind that most objects you see in the heliocentric model of the universe have only a very small amount of charge per unit mass. The Earth and Mars each have a charge of about 400,000 of the gravitational force between them is about 17 orders of magnitude larger than the electric forces. So even though our immediate surroundings are dominated by electricity, including our own bodies, for that matter, again, in the heliocentric model, is dictated by gravity. Gravity does not take place until we start talking about it. A moon orbiting a planet orbiting a sun, or stars orbiting their center of their galaxies. You may think this is a theory, but I'm absolutely right. I find it a bit odd that they need ideas like dark matter to make up over 90% of their model to explain how it is possible. Dark matter is 27%, ordinary matter 4%, stars 1%, and others 1%. Dark energy 68%. Having said this, I understand people's reluctancy to use gravity in any kind of discussion about the place we live in. At the same time, most people who have never been educated on the subject correctly believe that the force holding things in orbit and the force making things fall are one of the same thing, in which lies the problem. It is hard to explain how this place works when most people do not know how the laws of electricity control the world around us. I'll try to explain how incoherent electrostatic accelerations work while using the examples that can be recreated by anyone. To start out, I will take a look at the Earth's electrostatic field. It's important we along with all the matter in this known realm are inside the electromagnetic field. The Earth itself is a measurable negative charge compared to the air above it, all across the plane. As soon as you leave the surface, there is a positive charge in the air around you that grows in an electrostatic potential. The further you go up towards the sky, it is a steady, gradual rise in potential, which tells us that the laws of electricity that we are between two Gaussian surfaces. A Gaussian surface is simply a surface that encloses or distributes a charge. If there were only one surface, the rate at which the positive potential grew would be different, knowing that we are between two Gaussian surfaces. We can also know that certain phenomenon will take place in all matter in the electric field or area between two surfaces. For this topic, we will first look into polarization through the electrostatic induction. Electrostatic induction is a phenomenon where positives and negative static charges on matter are slightly separated or polarized due to the electrostatic charge of its surrounding area. Ring magnets in loudspeakers have a central north pole, with the opposite south pole actually being all points along the outer circumference. This perfectly demonstrates the magnetism of our flat world, whereas the allegedly sources of magnetism in the ball earth model is emitted from the hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles to constantly move, thus evading the independent verification that there's two ceremonial poles. In reality, the deepest hole drilling in history is the Russian Koryultra Deep, managed to get 8 miles down. So the entire ball earth model taught in schools showing our crust, outer mantle, outer core, inner core layers are all purely speculative, as we have never penetrated through or beyond the crust. A compass only works on a flat level surface. The magnetic center, it never works on a ball with tilt. We accept the reality of the world that we are presented. It's as simple as that. The power of the system we live in is to make people believe things that are so ridiculous on the face of it, but being told it over and over again since the day we were born, that they cannot question it anymore. Many of the things like the sun is a good example for someone to say the sun is a hell of a lot closer to us than 93 million miles. The average person is going to roll their eyes back. This is the system protecting itself in the lie we have been given and constructed into. A lot of people will go on at this and say, why did we get lied to? You can think of basic reasons like deny someone the knowledge of knowing where they exist. That deprives a human being of almost everything to not even understand where you exist. Really denies you to know where you are going to, where you come from. The things that are even possible in this place, because you don't know what even this place is. You're saying after the Big Bang, even with the law of thermodynamics called entropy, which I'll be getting to later, somehow our galaxy ended up being perfectly a flat plane, not just the solar system a flat plane, the entire Milky Way system is a flat plane. All the planets spin in the same direction. The odds of that are less than winning the lottery every day for thousands of years. Now let's write about the moon. Perfect circle. The odds of that happen after the Big Bang and the chaos and atoms and particles and dust and rocks colliding is just zero. The odds are literally zero. There's no force there, no wind, there's no erosion, there's no water, there's no force acting upon that moon that would make it a perfect sphere. The odds of the spin of the moon is exactly the same speed as it rotates around the Earth, again a zero. If it was 1/4 of a mile an hour difference, it would slowly turn. And there is zero physics explanations with the model of gravity as we know it to explain why its axis of rotation is exactly matching it rotating around us, that we only see one side. Light being shined upon a sphere does not make the luminescence the same all the way across. You can test all this with balls and a flashlight. It's impossible. It can't happen. It can only happen on a two-dimensional object. See that you can only see one side of the moon because it miraculously wrote because of its miraculous rotation makes a perfect circle. And the fact that the luminescence is the same across the whole thing implies a two-dimensional object. The size and weight of the moon, according to science, it is impossible for it to be rotating around our Earth the way the moon was created according to the mainstream science. Is that an object the size of Mars hit Earth and created the moon? That's nonsense. We would have rings like Saturn, whereas all the dust, where all the debris, it doesn't make sense. Next up, the sun is 400 times bigger and miraculously 400 times further away than the moon. They both look like two machine-cut coins. They line up perfectly to make eclipses. The odds of that are 1 in trillions times 100 trillion times 1 in trillions. It's not possible. Did the perfect circle line up perfectly with something 400 times larger from a third factor, which is your fixed position, which is on Earth, which is claimed to be spinning at 1,901 miles an hour. The shadows of the eclipse is 70 miles wide. There is no way to make a shadow smaller than the object. Of course, there are people who will say umbra, because like goats have been trained to say that. They cannot recreate an umbra on Earth. They only believe it because they have been indoctrinated to believe it since the time of the birth by people who want it to remove their connection to God, which is sound, vibration. Science is a bit of a religion. When you come into a scientific room and you challenge NASA, they're not going to talk to you. They're just going to call you a silly man and ignore everything you're going to say. You see, this is a programming of science doing this. Science should be dictating that everything being questioned should be questioned, and yet this is not what we see. The law of entropy is the matter and energy naturally go from order to chaos. If you break a glass, even after 1 billion years, the broken shard will not reform into the glass because objects have a tendency towards entropy, towards dissolving, towards breaking apart. So how do we have a human eyeball from a Big Bang? The Big Bang happens and it creates an ever expanding waterfall cascade, domino effects of atoms smashing against each other in an empty darkness of eternity. So again, the law of entropy, that things go from order to chaos, how on earth do we have the structure of the human eyeball, in which we can see light and recreate the light in our minds as images that represent our physical reality. It contradicts to a point of laughable mockery. Gravity is a hoax. Static forces is the force between two objects of opposite electric charge. Dielectric acceleration is magnetic attraction, not gravity.